Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the DSCI Best Practice Meet 2020. This is the 14th edition of our flagship event. Continuing the tradition of theme based deliberation, our BPM 2022 would deliberate, debate, and contest the ideas of security consolidation and innovation. By looking at the security context for this decade, we have kept the theme for BPM 2022 to be security consolidation, consolidate, or innovate. Welcome to the session on cloud security governance, drivers, areas, focus, principle, capabilities, and references. The session would be focusing on more about the cloud security governance on the various aspects like tenets of the cloud security governance, some sort of cloud security risk and controls, and cloud security framework. We have a very electric line of speakers deliberating on the cloud security governance. Please welcome Mr. Vishal Pranjale, Head of Security and Resilience, India, Invesco. Hi, Mr. Vishal. Welcome.
Hi, Shan. Hello, all. Good afternoon.
Yeah. Please welcome Dr. Abhilasha Vyas, Business Unit Head, Cloud Security and BI, CloudThat. Welcome, Dr. Abhilasha. Please welcome Mr. Mayur Desai, Global Director, Information Security Engineering, PepsiCo.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Vishal.
Mr. Mayur.
Thank you, Vishal. Good afternoon to
Also,
everybody.
Also soon, Mr. Dominic Vijay, VP, CTO at ART Housing Finance would be joining us. I would request all the attendees to share their questions on the chat and Q&A window. Also, the session would be moderated by Dr. Abhilasha Vyas. Over to you, Dr. Abhilasha.
I think she might be
Yeah,
facing some issues.
Abhilasha, we are unable to hear you.
Yeah, so I think there is some little glitch with the Dr. Abhilasha. So she will be joining in a minute.
Okay.
So, by the time Abhilasha joins, why don't we start at least with the agenda of the topic? And I think hopefully by that time Abhilasha would join.
I think Ishan is just dropped, went backstage. Okay, let's give a minute, Vishal. Okay. Vishal, you are able to hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, guys. Uh, I think we have Abhilasha back again. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. There
Hi.
was some technical issue. I thought, okay, perfect.
So good to
So I
have
think
you.
we can
Let's get
start our
started.
discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, Mayur and Vishal. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for having all of us here for discussing this very important topic. So we have seen that in the current context of rapid digitization, the cloud has emerged as a key enabler for organizations and looking to adopt the technology at a very faster pace to improve the productivity, scalability of operations, and to drive innovative delivery of products and services. So, against the backdrop of rapid digitization and growing adoption of cloud, the fundamental intent of this panel discussion is basically to establish best practices in cloud security governance and assurance, the key driver which we can use to make our secure infrastructure. Thank you so much, Ishan, for introducing us, and thank you, my panel member, for joining for this discussion. So I'll just give you a little background on cloud governance and what are the things which we are going to discuss in today's panel discussion. So the underlying guiding principle when it comes to governance is that when you take care of even the smallest thing, as it might lead to the larger security ramifications. So we have to take each and everything as an important aspect when we are configuring, when we are managing the settings for the security things. So hence the robust security assurance and governance framework is very very imperative for enterprises. And any governance mechanism essentially comprise of three things I can say. The first is that taking every possible step to prevent unwanted instance. The second is that it should have capability to identify and remediate any undesirable event. And the most important and the third point is they should have mechanism to minimize its impact. So these are the three important things which we should be taking care whenever we will be implementing any kind of governance mechanism. Also, we can say that security governance is cloud environment which helps to solve challenges which are based around the business outcomes, objectives, any kind of risk management. So, in a total, if I want to summarize and if I want to say that cloud governance is set of rules and policies adopted by companies that run services in the cloud. And the goal of cloud governance, we can say, is to enhance first the data security. Second, manage risk and also enable the smooth operation of cloud systems. So the cloud makes it easier, like even for the teams to manage and deploy the resources with a single click. Plus, we know that it's very easy to manage the entire infrastructure at a single click, even at the on-prem or at the cloud. But again, all these easiness are also coming up with a lot of challenges which we need to work on, which we need to set up, and all those points we are going to discuss in today's panel discussion because we know that cloud governance is very very important area because it ensures that assets deployment, system integration, data security, and other aspects of cloud computing should be properly planned, considered, and managed. So, the policies which are helping us in managing these aspects. So, it is very, very highly dynamic in the cloud environment. So, that's why we need to make different groups, we need to manage the different vendors, we need to work in the multi cloud environment. So, all these complex environment requirement we need to meet. And cloud governance initiatives are ensuring that we are meeting this complex environment, organizational policies, security best practices, and compliance obligations. So, right planning and procedures around cloud security, assurance, and governance will surely help in secure infrastructure. So, with this, I hope that you got the understanding that for all points we are going to discuss in today's session. And what are questions we have, all the things which are related around the cloud governance, how we can make the best use of cloud governance policies. So, I will be first starting. My questions, which I framed to understand this topic in a better way, I would like to ask Vishal, what is your take on the primary key tenets of cloud security governance?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abhilasha. I think this is a very apt question nowadays, considering the cloud security aspects. So, I think when we talk about cloud, the understanding nowadays is once we offload our information to the cloud vendor, then our job is done. So most of the organizations are thinking like that, but the final accountability lies with the organization, right? So, whenever we are trying to shift some critical information to the cloud, a very strong security governance framework, I think that's most important for any cloud. Nowadays, many organizations are facing the problem of similar to kind of a shadow IT, wherein the businesses they themselves reach out to the cloud vendor and they involve the technology and security team in the last leg of the contract finalization stage. So I think in any organizations, we need to have a very strong security framework for the cloud so that any cloud requirement, there should be a proactive involvement of technology and security in terms of reviews and in terms of approvals. And then only the business should go for the cloud vendor services. Again, the as usual, the basic tenets of the cloud security also start with the secure by design principle. I think that's the most basic and the hygiene for any security framework. So even for the cloud also, you can start secure by design principle. So how all the aspects of security framework, like securing all layers in cloud also. In cloud, what happens is the attack surface changes, because in on premises you have all your infrastructure within your premises. Now in cloud, you're providing all that infrastructure and your information to some third party cloud vendor who is having your information in their premises. So of course it has its own issues like multi-tenancy. You don't have any visibility on what's happening in their premises, what all the physical security aspects, what all the environmental security aspects. Of course, the vendor would provide all the assurance that it's 100% perfect. But having a vendor neutral view and having a vendor neutral cloud security assessment, that is also one of the most important part of the cloud security framework. That's what I would say. Some of the other primary tenets of cloud security is, again, as usual, protect your information either in transit or at rest. Then you should enable the traceability. Where is your information flowing? What all the logs you have? What is the monitoring mechanism for that? How you can minimize the attack surface, and also the incident response, because if you look at the Thales security report for 2022, the cloud breaches has been increased to 45%. So that's 5% more from last year. So it's a myth that if we are offloading some information to cloud, we are more secure. So that's not the case. So definitely you need to have all the security practices in place with the strong security governance framework, and then I'm sure you will have your information more secure in cloud as well. So I think these are the primary tenets of cloud, Abhilasha, in my view.
Thank you so much, Vishal. And really, these are the important points which every organizations need to take care when it comes to incident response, when it comes to vendor comparison, when it's come to the security, and when the organizations are moving from on-prem to cloud. So there are a lot
Right.
of security challenges when the organizations, because a lot of the confidential applications are running at the on-prem, but now organizations are moving them also to the cloud so that the employees can also have a remote access. So in that case also, there are a lot of security measures which we need to take care. So my next question will be from you, Mayur, that what are the security risks of cloud computing or cloud environment, which any organizations needs to prepare while they are migrating to the cloud?
Okay. Thank you, Abhilasha, for that question, and very apt question in today's environment, right? So, I don't see any organization who has not adopted cloud journey, right? So, all the organization have started their footprints into cloud. The percentages differ. Somebody is already in a mature stage of 100% cloud migration. Some of the organizations are at the middle tier where they are 50% cloud, 50% on-prem, and there are organizations who have just started their journey, right? But I don't see any organization who haven't started for the sheer benefits that organization is getting from the cloud computing infrastructure, right? So that's a very apt scenario for today. So first and foremost thing, before an organization starts to think what are the security measures that you need to implement, or the areas that you need to focus when an organization starting its journey, is first to try and understand uh, what's your business objective, what is that you want to achieve when you're trying to migrate your organization strategy into cloud, right? So first understand organization objectives, what is that you want to achieve. Second, then work on having a clarity on what's going to be your strategy, on what kind of deployments you want to do, what kind of cloud model you want to implement. You want to do infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, security as a service, software as a service. So depend look at what kind of model meets your organizational objective. Have a clear understanding with your business lines. Make a proper strategy around it, right? So once you have these areas clearly dotted on, what's going to be your cloud deployment model, how, what kind of workloads you're going to have, what kind of connectivity you're going to set up between your on-prem to your data centers, so on and so forth. So have a clear strategy on that. And once you have a clear strategy on that, now I am taking an opportunity to jump into what are the areas any organization typically should look at from a security concerns. What are the security risks that cloud infrastructure will pose? And 80% of them are no different from what you have on on-prem, right? As Vishal said, the threat landscape, the attack surface is larger in cloud because a lot of organizations choose to do public cloud implementation, so on and so forth, right? So the attacks are much larger and much more when compared to on-prem, which is between the four walls of your data center, very well managed, right? So coming back to the areas, first and foremost, which I've been in information security domain for last 2 decades, and identity access management still remains to be first and foremost areas of security that you need to start working on. So in today's world, having an SSO with Okta kind of a thing, which is a basic security controls that you need to have, having an MFA as part of identity access management, having an RBAC, all these are base levels of security controls that you need to have for a proper identity access management implementation. Second, as Vishal also touched base, right? It's not just that you dump your data on the cloud platform and your CSP, cloud service provider, takes care of it. No, you need to know what kind of data are you dumping into cloud. What's the classification of the information that you're dumping in the cloud, whether it's confidential, whether it's restricted. You really need to understand from a business perspective what's the value you are assigning to the data. You need to know the value of the data, right? Today data is the most critical element for business, right? And you need to ensure it is protected. And we shall also touch based on how the data is protected at rest, in transit. What are the controls that you have? How is the data protected runtime when the data is sitting there on the cloud? So data protection completely, what kind of technologies do you have, what kind of tools you have for data loss prevention? And then you have with cloud you have another capability which is quite familiar in today's environment. Most of the organizations have, which is called as CASB, so cloud security access brokers. So most of the organizations keep this kind of a technology to kind of look at the data point of view and see how it can be protected, right? So that's one other area. Another foremost important aspect is infrastructure security, right? What kind of network controls, what kind of firewalls, IDS, IPS capabilities have you implemented? What's your logging? Have you, again, we shall also touch based on what kind of logging have you enabled? What kind of network security control groups have you enabled? How are your apps being deployed, so on and so forth? So infrastructure point of view, you really need to have a good understanding. Now comes another important aspect, which is the vulnerability management, right? So you do it on prem today, but in cloud, because of the sheer uh, the speed at which the infrastructure can be spin up, spin down, workloads can be spinned up. So you really need to have a strong, robust vulnerability management program, right? So anything that gets spun up, before that you need to have a compliance check on what workloads are being spin up, whether it's compliant with your policy standards. So robust, strong vulnerability management program is a very, very important in today's environment, specifically on the cloud side of it. And it needs to be a continuous process. It cannot be a one time or a half yearly or a quarterly process. It needs to be a continuous process as well. And then comes for cloud, there is a new area that most of the organizations have started working. Most of the big fours have started working. Most of the organizations kind of cater to cyber threat intelligence platforms which are integrated with your SIM platforms, right? So there is a lot of hacks happening around, lot of new vulnerabilities are being detected every day as we speak, right? So that intelligence needs to be brought in properly and integrated in your organization's security tools, right? So that's very, very important aspect today to stay ahead of curve, right? It's not that you react when you are compromised. You need to be more proactive. So see, the cyber threat intelligence platforms is becoming more and more important to have as part of your security stack. And then last comes, this is the last point I want to focus on emphasis, which is very, very important from a business point of view, from an organization point of view, is the resiliency. And I cover resiliency to two parts. One is the cyber resiliency, how faster you detect, respond, recover. That's the cyber capability part of it. And the resiliency can be from the infrastructure point of view as well. What's your BCP DR capability? What's your recovery capability from an infrastructure? If something goes down, how much of resiliency have you built in for your infrastructure? So I think these are some of the key areas any organization should look at when they think about moving into the cloud platform or cloud journey they needs to look at. So this is at a very high level my view on what organization should focus. So over to
I
you,
think very,
Abhilasha.
Very, very aptly you said, Mayur. I just want to add one main key point here. The basic difference between the cloud and on-premises is in terms of security risk. So, with the cloud vendor, multi-tenancy, the cloud vendor is managing the information of multiple organizations at the same time. So, one of the key security risk is how you are making sure that your information do not have any other organization do not have any visibility on your information, and it is not leaked in the cloud environment. So I think that is also one of the key point which the organization needs to look into.
Sure, that's a
Yeah,
good
very
point.
rightly said. Yeah. So thank you so much for bringing your ideas on this particular question. So I completely agree with you what you have said. So I just want to summarize it that whenever enterprises are moving from on-prem to cloud or they are planning their security strategy, so that strategy should encompass the process and mechanism which can be used to control not only the security but the compliance also and other risks which are associated with the cloud computing. So as you rightly shared, Mayur, that the security strategy should not only address the access or risk management and governance, but it also should be covering the range of other security concerns, like you rightly said, the data to applications, what and how much access we are giving to the applications, to the data, to the person those who are using those applications, and very well rightly said the use of the tool that is kind of a cache B solutions, and also to again secure the entire infrastructure like host network. You want to keep your ports open or you want to use passion, so you can plan your entire strategy and then you can have an entire control of the logs with the use of some sim tools, some monitoring tools. So it's wonderful to have such strategy where we can have control of the entire resources and we have access to the logs through which we can deep dive into the patterns, we can deep dive into the access mechanism which the people or the users are using for the infrastructure. So this is becoming a more interesting discussion with the questions, and I see that the audience are also participating in this. So this is really going to be a very fruitful discussion for all. So my next question will be from you, Vishal, that what do you think, like, is security risk is getting reduced to an acceptable level? What's your take on that?
Very interesting question, Abhilasha. Whether the security risk are getting at the acceptable level by just selecting a cloud vendor or not. So, in my opinion, I would say it's a myth. I mentioned in the first question also, just offloading the information to the cloud vendor doesn't make us more secure. Of course, the cloud vendor they have more security services to provide, and as an organization, we can very well use that, but we need to make sure that it is the accountability and responsibility lies with the organization. Everyone might have heard about the shared responsibility model. So for the basic services, of course, the cloud vendor would make sure that their infrastructure is secure and they have ISO 27001 certifications and all those things. But when it comes to organization information, organization data, it is the organization, they need to make sure that all the security best practices are in place. So I don't think by just migrating to cloud make any organization more secure. By the way, I just want to ask the attendees, or Abhilasha, you or Mayur, what do you think? When was the last attack on the cloud infrastructure or cloud vendor? If you look at the statistics, in fact, AWS got breached just in 2 months before in May, wherein they lost around 6.5 terabytes of information, which was belonging to the Pegasus Airlines. So what I'm trying to say here is the cloud vendor, while providing the security services, that doesn't mean that they are more secure. How do we implement it? How do we configure it? Whether we configure it properly with, you know, taking advantage of all their services or not, taking advantage of all their security aspects or not. In case if the organizations are just taking the services without configuring it properly, then it's of no use. So the the security risk are same, I would say. In fact, it is increased because, as I mentioned, the attack surface it's change and it's increased rather with the multi tenancy in picture. So definitely we need to have all the security best practices and security hygiene and have the risk aware culture in place. And I don't think it is the security risk by just offloading the information to the cloud vendor, it is reduce. I would say either it is same or probably increase, and organization needs to work on it. That's my take.
Right, Vishal. Yeah, I completely agree with you that it's up to us that how we are going to configure those security services because when we talk about the shared responsibility model, the responsibility is shared between the customer and the cloud service provider. So if both are having the responsibility, they both have to take the charge also. Like we can't say that, okay, everything is on cloud, so we are secure. For
Right.
example, like let's say if you are using Azure, so in that Azure, if every user who is part of that Azure AD is having that global admin role, where your security is, everybody is having access to everything. So we have to work
Correct.
on the different models like zero trust architecture, least privilege access. So all these are the terminologies which needs to be taken care when you are trying to configure your security and the measures. So, okay, so let's have a few more discussion on the validations of the security controls and their effectiveness against the security risks. So, Mayur, what your take on
Mhm.
that? That is there we have any mechanism for validation of the security controls and their effectiveness if we talk against the cyber risk in the cloud?
So that's an interesting question. So if you're asking me, Abhilasha, what's the best way to validate some of the security controls, right? So today, in today's environment, we have specifically on the cloud, we have a good capability called as cloud security posture management, right? That's a platform that actually gives you complete visibility on how you've set up your cloud platform, what are the risks that are coming up. Everything is highlighted, so you have an opportunity to use the industry best practices when it comes to how the controls are implemented in terms of CIS. Then you have your organizational policies and standard that you can configure and deploy, and the cloud posture management gives you a complete view on how effectively your policies and controls are kind of implemented in the organization. That's one way to look at it. Second way to look at it is we have certain cloud native tools also in Azure. You have in AWS, every cloud platform gives you a native tools to give you a complete risk posture of each of the workloads that you're deploying, how you have deployed your workload servers, how you have configured everything, how you how you have implemented your identities, how what kind of permissions you have given for everything. There is a recommendations coming based on the policies and the industry standards that are there. So you look at some of those postures and the native tools that are being given to you, configure it appropriately. Anything that you see with a high risk from the native solutioning or from the posture management, immediately remediate. Anything which is moderate to high, do not leave it to be addressed for future. Rather, it needs to be immediately, or there needs to be a certain orchestration that you can build in. Anything that you see is as high risk, that particular specific workload needs to be uninstalled or removed from the instance itself, right? So there are certain ways and mechanisms and processes in which you can monitor how effectively you are kind of doing it. Other way of doing and going little one step ahead, right? How do you test your controls, right, whether they are working effectively or ineffectively? So today in the CISO's organization, you have red teaming, you have blue teaming, right? I'm just touching upon some of the topics that we have not spoken about, which is red teaming, blue teaming. So leverage your red teaming capability, blue teaming capability to kind of penetrate and see some of your cloud platforms to see what is vulnerable, what is not vulnerable, and see look at the results from your internal capability. That's one way of doing it. And the last and other aspect that I've leveraged personally in my professional experience is I engage a third party vendor to come and test my security controls for my cloud platform and give them a plain vanilla greenfield and say, please go ahead and try and breach our environment and tell us where we are going wrong, right? And that way I will make sure my blue teaming is kind of looking at whenever the third party is testing, are we able to detect each of the phases in which they are trying to break into our systems? Is the logging working perfectly? If they are able to breach, are we able to detect it in advance? So this kind of exercise kind of gives a complete clear in-depth visibility of how effectively have you implemented your cybersecurity controls or information security controls in your organization. And I'm sure there are a lot of learnings that I have seen in my past experience coming from these activities, and then you work on some of those areas and try and fix those areas. I've seen a lot of issues that have been shown that our AD was compromised, some of the ADs are compromised, some of the identities which are out there. GitHub has a lot of codes which are there from where the identities are stolen. So the, there are a lot of learning that comes from him. So there is no 100% security. This is a continuous learning process. Once you identify something, you kind of go back and see how you increase your strategy, change your strategy to identify the gaps that you have identified, and then have a regular governance on some of these activities and manage your security risk posture. So there's no single silver bullet on how you secure it. It's multiple efforts that you need to put in as an organization, and it's a continuous process. It doesn't stop anytime.
Very rightly assess and formulate the points, Mayur, from your side. It's really good to have the people, experienced people like you discussing on this topic. So I just want to add few points from my side because I'm also working in this area. I've also seen that people are having a lot of tools and techniques which they are using, but maybe they are not aware about the cloud native tools, the one which you have pointed out, that you can yourself assess your security settings like CIS controls and all. Like I'll give you example of Azure. We have a very good tool that is Defender for Cloud. So you have all those
Correct.
security score which is coming to you, and not only the score, you also have the recommendations also. Like we have not set up the MFA for all the identities, so you have that fixing of there also. So that cloud service providers are giving us the opportunities to secure our environment, but we have to move towards. We have to take one step ahead to understand the services which are available. So that is also important if you want to have your security configuration. Your team of the people, those who are going to run that, they should also be trained properly on the available services. So we have to train them in such a way that they can understand and analyze the entire environment, and based on that, they can plan the policies and the strategies. So I completely agree with you, and really, this is a very interesting discussion which is happening. So one more question I want to throw on Vishal, that what do you think are the security investment on the cloud is yielding the desired results? What do you say on this?
Uh, I would say it's a tricky question, and but quite interesting question. The security investments in cloud, whether it's yielding the desired results or not, I would say yes. From a operational perspective, from a security operations perspective, also definitely it's yielding positive results. And I can give you a very simple example of, let's say, automating some of the infrastructure. Many cloud vendor uses infrastructure as a code. So you use your development techniques and create a template which will have a VM, virtual machine, or a server a configuration in that particular template. And again, you don't have to configure it from scratch. Of course, if you are considering all the security aspects, the security baselining from scratch, and bringing or building your template, then definitely it's very useful for any organization on 2 points. First thing is, once you automate this particular process, every template will have the security baseline automatically configured. Plus, the organizations are saving a lot of time on configuring these robust servers, wherein in on premises you need to order it and it takes 4 weeks to 6 weeks, and then you need to configure each server separately. But in the cloud environment, it just click of a button, and then boom, you have the server ready. So in all the security operational aspects, definitely it's yielding the positive results, provided if your cloud strategy is good, or I would say is finalized towards your business objectives. Like Mayur also mentioned this particular thing. If you have a cloud strategy which is aligned to your business objective, and then you are working in that particular direction, then definitely you would get the return on investment on that. And at the operational level, as I mentioned, it is definitely giving some breather to the organizations, wherein on one click you get a lot of services. If you want to just, let's say, another example is configure, say, multi-factor authentication. you can just take the AWS multi-factor authentication service, and again on one click it will get configured, wherein you don't have to break your head in deciding on which tool you need to go for and do the vendor assessments or POCs for different tools. So I would say it's definitely bringing very good results from operational perspective if your strategy is aligned with these operations and as well as with the business objective. And as you all know that now cloud is the future. Mayur also said that most of the companies they are adopting cloud. I am seeing most of the startups they are going with the cloud services because it becomes easy for them and very much feasible. They don't have to focus on the administrative task. They can focus on their main core business. So my take is definitely it's giving the positive results.
And I
Right,
think
Vishal.
just to add to what Vishal is saying, right, today, uh, uh, doing business, it comes at a cost, right? So cost
Right.
is nothing but building up a required baseline when it comes to cybersecurity, right? So any business who wants to drive their digital transformation, there is a certain cost associated to it from how you're going to secure it, right? So that's the cost of the business that you will do have to do it, right? So today anything that you do it over the internet, any business that you want to run it over internet, over cloud, has to be a certain cost allocated how you're securing, and that's the cost that you every organization is willing to implement to secure their infrastructure, right? That's by default. On day one they're getting the returns of it. Second is how well you're strategizing your security strategy is going to yield the benefits in how you're avoiding all the breaches, all the attacks that are happening against your organization at all the point in time, right? So it all depends on how well you have structured, well how well you have defined your capability in cloud in from that point of view, right? So it's definitely a cost that business has to bear it, but there are definitely returns because you definitely see the capability of some of the security products that we have today, which we have deployed in cloud, and how well it is protecting our cloud environment and business environment on the cloud infrastructure. So that's another
That's
uh,
yeah, that's
important
that's
aspect.
that's very true. And in terms of cost, also it's quite less because they don't have to build the data center. They don't have to build the heavy servers. So it's everything on the cloud. So I think yes, cost optimization is also there.
Yeah, perfect. So I have few more questions with me, but then I thought that let's pick some questions from the participant because there is other discussion is also going on over here. So I'll
Sure.
take the first question from the Anand Kumar. So the question is, especially these days, vendors come with a schedule or trigger-based data collection and governance imposition to it. What would be your suggestion to get hold on security situation which misses a schedule and how continuous compliance will be maintained?
Can you, if you don't mind, can you uh, put the
Yeah.
question once again? I missed
Yeah,
out
so
on
the
catching up on
question is like the vendors are coming with a schedule or trigger based approach based on the data collection and governance imposition to it. Now they want to understand that what is your suggestion to get hold on security situation which misses a schedule or how continuous compliance will be maintained. So
I
it's a
I
trigger
have
based or data collection kind of a situation they are want to
I
understand.
have an interesting solution for this particular question. You should have a trigger configured for any missing trigger. So, so in case if you are missing on any trigger, you can have a notification. And I know about AWS. I'm not sure about Azure or Google Cloud. In case if you are missing on anything, then you can have the notification configured, and it throws another trigger saying that you miss on this one particular aspect. That's quite interesting solution, but very valid question. And of course, you need to have a very strong monitoring mechanism in
Right.
case if you are missing on some trigger, and some mechanism where you would be knowing that you miss on this particular point, and then you can post facto you can try to do the damage control, or you can try to rectify your process. So of course there is some kind of manual intervention which is required. No process you can make it 100% automated. There is some manual intervention which is required. Even in the cloud security or in security, even if with the security orchestration and automated and response, no vendor is guaranteeing you 100% automation. They are definitely giving you 30 to 40% increase in your manual efforts in terms of automating those things. But there would be at the end of the day, there would be some manual intervention which is required in case if you are missing any triggers. And as I mentioned, you can have the triggers configured for the missing triggers as well.
Sure. And a
Yeah,
good
rightly
point.
said, Vishal. Yeah. You
Sure.
want to
So,
continue, Mayur?
one of the important capabilities I've seen organization adopting, right, based on what Vishal is saying, right. So, every activity that is scheduled on cloud, right, needs to be monitored, as Vishal said, right. But the additional capability that I'm talking about is you have your plain vanilla SIM, which has been used by most of the
Right.
organizations for last 10 to 15 years,
Yeah.
and you have a SOAR platform on it, right, which is implemented today, which is completely orchestrated, automated process. But the capability is uh, which I'm trying to talk about is the threat defense capability. So I've seen certain organizations have dedicated teams called as threat defense, whose everyday job is to look at some of the alerts, some of the logging that kind of is very important, critical for the organization from a business point of view. And if there is something that is missing, that kind of triggers an alert into your SIEM tool via SOAR, right? So that's the missing piece of it, which needs to be factored in and kind of needs to be kind of implemented as part of the process, right? So there's a lot of detections organizations do implement today. They look at the severity of it, which are more important for the business, which are moderate, which are low. The ones which are high are implemented in the beginning, because I've seen TD teams have a backlog of almost 500 to 1000 detections that they're continuously working on to implement as part of the SOAR platform, right? So it takes a lot of effort to automate some of these things, right? So this is a new capability that is being built by the organizations. I think this capability is somewhere going to address some of these concerns that are coming in today's world in cloud computing environment. So over to you,
Yeah,
Abhilash.
rightly said. Yeah, rightly said, Mayur. I also wanted to give example of SIM and SOAR solution only. So I wanted to give example of Sentinel. So here we have the capability to design the
Right.
playbooks or triggers based on the conditions, and also we can have some rules, and we can have ingest the data from the different data sources. So at a single place, even if you are using on-prem SIM, then also you can have those logs coming in at a single place. You can have
Correct.
the bird eye view of everything which is happening in your infrastructure. So we can use such tools which are cloud native, which also help us in investigating the data which are multi-cloud based also. So we can ingest the data from the other third-party sources also. So that's
True.
very important to understand now. I have one more interesting question from you, Mayur. So the question is from Manan Vora. Please suggest if we have depend on CSPM or we can build our own CSPM way of
Again,
managing. Yeah,
okay, if you have money, go out and buy a cloud security posture management, and that definitely will yield a lot of value. And again, if you ask me which is the vendor to go about it, I will not suggest any specific vendor, because every organization needs are very very different, right? So and pockets are very different. Some organizations have deep pockets, some organizations have very limited budget, right? Small organizations who have just startup will have very little budget for the security, and you still have to manage it. So if you have deep pockets, please go ahead and leverage all the capability that is available in the market. If it's not there, you can build your own custom. So it depends on the scenario, organization to organization.
If
Abhilash.
if you if you
yeah.
are a aspiring entrepreneur, you can build your own platform and start selling it to
Right, right.
other organizations.
Yeah. So I'll take last question because we have limited time. So question is from Shanta Raja. Using single CSP is good, or invest in multiple CSP by considering cost into account and ROI. So we should go for multi CSP or single CSP.
See,
Right.
large organizations, in my experience, have going in for multi-cloud environment for the sheer benefit that each platform offers. As an example, Azure versus AWS, you have different benefits if you do business in Azure, because Azure is Microsoft. If you are a Microsoft shop as an organization, then you do it makes sense to do Azure, right? Because all your tooling and your capability can easily be integrated into Azure. If you are an organization which is not heavily Microsoft dependent, then there are a lot of good features available in AWS, and you can start your businesses with a lot of new business capabilities that Azure is offering, not Azure, sorry, AWS is offering today, right? And GCP is also catching up. So most of the large organizations, like the organization that I represent, which is PepsiCo, usually have multi-cloud strategy. But again, it depends from organization to organization, and they can adopt single cloud strategy or multi-cloud strategy depending on the business, their footprints, and the scale at which they operate across the globe. Right, all these factors comes in together, and the business makes the right decision going forward.
Just to add on that, so it is very dynamic. We cannot go with just one solution, finalize that, okay, we would just stick with AWS or we would just stick with Google Cloud. So in Invesco also, we use one vendor as our enterprise cloud provider. But being said that, if the business, they can go to other vendor if in case if their the requirement is getting fulfilled in a better way with the other vendor, then of course they have every right to go to other vendor. So again, it depends on case to case basis, and as Mayur mentioned correctly, on different various scenarios, whether to go for a multiple cloud vendor or whether to have a one cloud vendor.
Yeah. Thank you for all the points, Mayur and Vishal. And we had a really good discussion on the points. And
Yeah,
as a summarize, I
quite
can say,
interesting,
yeah,
quite interesting
yeah.
discussions and very nice questions.
Yes, yes, and I like that the participants are also interacting and they were also
Yeah.
asking their questions and giving their own point of view also. That also like converted this session into more interactive session. So it's really nice, and because of that reason, only the panel discussion is designed so that we can get some positive points out of that. So
Right.
I think we all is agree now that it's the cloud is all about the shared responsibility model when it comes to the governance also. We have to take care of each and every aspects when we are planning any strategy for managing the secure infrastructure, not only in terms of managing the data and application, but in terms of managing the infrastructure and compliance also. And we have to, every organization is having a different goal altogether. So it's up to us that how we are going to design our organizational policies to manage the governance, the rules and set of the accesses which we are giving, how we are designing the RBAC and the other things. So I think that's it from my side. And anything if you want to add, Mayur and Vishal, please go ahead.
No,
That's it from my
so
side.
I
Thank
think
you.
it was a great session. Topics are really apt to the today's environment. Most of the organizations are going through this journey, and everybody is in the same boat, if you ask me. And we all, most of us, have all the similar challenges, and we're working through challenges, right? So, and security is a profession where doesn't the goalpost doesn't stay constant; it keeps moving in. So the continuous effort has to be there from the security professionals point of view, and we need to be vigilant 24, and we always want to stay ahead of the nation state attackers, right? So it's a learning process, it's continuous improvement process for us, doesn't stop any day.
And I echo the same thoughts as Mayur. I think it was quite interesting session, focusing mainly on the cloud security governance, and we discuss various aspects of the cloud security governance. So I'm sure it might be beneficial for the people who has attended this session.
Thank you.
Many thanks, Dr. Abhilasha. Many thanks, Mr. Vishal, and thanks a lot, Mr. Mayur, for this wonderful and insightful session. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Thank
thanks,
you,
Vishal.
pleasure was
Thank you.
ours.
Thank you
Thank
very
you, have a
much.
great day, guys.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye,
Bye. Have a
everyone.
great
Take
day.
care.
Bye.